James, you can grab that. On the stage here is the director, writer, and actor in this film, Joel Edgerton. And we also have James Gay, who's a mental health therapist, and Aaron Fox, who's here with the LGBT Center doing advocacy work. So, powerful film, yeah, to watch. So I'd like to start there, Joel, with you, and ask you to talk a little bit about this film. There's so many important parts of this film, about everything from the societal issues to the very personal issues of this family. And our work focuses on mental health and making sure that people have access to care, and more importantly that we change the culture so that people who are hurting can get the care and support they need. And there's so much in this film about emotional well-being, or the opposite of that, things that, programs like this that do things that cause such damage. This story, I think, surprises a lot of people in the subtlety and the nuances of this family. These parents were not monsters, they're not monsters. And watching it, I wondered how important it was for you to tell the story in this kind of nuanced way, and why you wanted to do this.
You're right, and sorry, I'm talking very loudly. When I read Garrett's book, one of the things that struck me after, because I was really obsessed by it, I'd read it a few times, thinking I would at that point maybe help produce the movie. And I realised that he had dedicated the book to his parents. And there are a lot of people out there, for example, who think that Garrett should, even to this day, cut his father off because his father still won't fully accept him. Garrett has a different kind of approach to that. He's stood his ground, and he's saying, I'll no longer move, I'll no longer shift who I am, but if you want to come closer, he's very patient about that. A man at a Q&A recently asked me, that it felt a little unrealistic, that what about all the other people who don't have parents that are partially empathetic or fully empathetic, as the difference in his mother and father are. And I said it's a very good question, because yes, there are people, whether it's around LGBTQ acceptance of their coming out, or other issues of out and out physical or mental abuse or sexual abuse, should no doubt cut themselves off from very toxic parents. Garrett is in his story, I saw, particularly in his mother, a hopefulness that was coming out the other end of an otherwise very harrowing story. And I read the book because I was purely just curious about this other kind of institution, and institutions fascinate me. That hopefulness was something I wasn't expecting. And the other thing that you're pointing out is that I didn't expect. I prejudged the situation as hateful people doing a hateful act of sending their child there for hateful reasons, that these places were created by hateful people, that it was all hate. And it really confused me when I realised this was an act of love, but an act of love guided by misinformation and founded on a belief system that meant that Garrett didn't stand a chance, because there was a belief that he wasn't who he was, and that the better version of him was to turn him around and bring him back safely to a community that would otherwise accept him. And the fact that the information he had internally and instinctively didn't match with what's in fact based on age-old beliefs, plus just general toxic social beliefs, which I think is really what's a lot behind the adherence to that part of scripture. People really have to examine whether it really is about religion, or whether it's actually about a societally built up
fear,
all the stuff that they can lean on with religion. So, but mainly that I didn't see his parents as monsters, and I think that the best thing I could do was take a lead from his book. Treat everybody with empathy. Know that they weren't getting up in the morning and go, I really want to destroy the lives of children today. But that inadvertently, through doing what they thought was the right thing, they were doing that. And how do we re-examine that whole situation and individual people's choices? And just to stand back and give a document of one, and look under one roof, one family. And within that one family there is hope, because at least one of those parents has done a full swing around and she fiercely protects him. And the father is in more pain than anybody else because he can't choose that pure love and acceptance.
Were you surprised at the power of the film? Have you been surprised about people's reaction to you regarding the film?
Yeah, I mean, the big issue is how do we get the right, what I call the right wrong people to see the film, and not to put people in, you know, paint people again with the wrong brush in life as we don't in the film. But, you know, there are people that really want to see the film. There are people that just want to see the film because they love Troye Sivan. There are people that don't need their minds changed who are going to come and see the film. There are definitely people who should see the film who won't see the film. There are definitely people, I think, in that middle zone, because I think the more I made the movie, it seemed to be for parents, you know. These are the people who are unfortunately placed in a position where they have big decisions to make. And it's actually not that big a decision, but that decision is enforced also by the opinions of their community, their friends. What are my friends going to think? But, you know, the path of least resistance, of acceptance as opposed to rejection, to be able to get a crystal ball into the future, and maybe this movie on a story level is a bit of a crystal ball to some things, you know, the character of Cameron and what happens when, you know, people get rejected. But look, I wasn't surprised, but some things have definitely shocked me that have come back. The amount of people who are reflecting that they've had a similar experience doesn't surprise me, but I'm always shocked by the stories. But I hadn't really thought about this, but there's occasionally the feeling that people are using the film as an icebreaker to a conversation. And not just children saying, hey mum, dad, or grandma, grandpa, could you come and see this film with me? But parents, I remember reading a tweet from a child who said, I cannot believe my mum just asked me if I've heard of this movie and would I go and see it. I think there's a conversation coming. And a boy who said that he saw the film and immediately drove 5 hours to come out properly to his parents. That they may have known if they looked at him on social media or whatever, but talking about that explicit conversation at the end of the movie, that he went to have that conversation. And I've never been involved with a movie before. I've been involved with movies that have a political element to them. I was constantly aware of how important Garrett's story was to me because I felt so passionate about it on a daily basis, but I don't think I was aware of just how possible it was for us to just shine a light and bring conversion therapy in our own way out from under its rock, but just as an identifier for some people. And certainly as there's a real audience of mothers going to see this film, and I don't care if there's a couple, if just one of those couple sees that film. Women have such power, as Martha shows in the film. Like, when you meet her next to her husband, she's like dwarfed by him in opinion in every single way when you meet her, but she wears the pants in that family now. Like, seriously, she controls, because she chose love, you know, she chose a very powerful weapon. And she lives by that every day.
Well, and it's interesting. I'm not sure there was a role you didn't take on. You directed, you wrote, you produced, and obviously you starred in this film. And can you talk a little bit about, with this particular film, which again, so powerful, based on a true story, a critical issue in society that you care about, and the character that you play is sort of on the wrong side of the equation based on what we're talking about. What was that like to be directing this and dealing with the emotions on the side of the main characters in the family, and also playing this person who was perpetrating this abuse.
Those days were the least fun, being in front of the camera and behind. I became fascinated with playing the real man. I based the character Victor Sykes on in the book. His real name is John Schmidt, and John ran Love in Action in Memphis for a number of years. He began as a client. The only person I think I know that claims to have been out, like come out of the closet, gone back in the closet, and then busted out again later on after a 20-something year hiatus where he was married and had 2 children. And, I'd seen footage of John in press conferences when Love in Action was exposed through MySpace in 2005. A young boy by the name of Zach was terrified. He was about to go there, and he said, "Look, these are some of the rules." And talk about people rallying. I mean, within a day and a half, there was a picket line out the front of Love in Action. And John had to come out and publicly defend his opinion, his stance. There I was, 10, 12, 14 years after that footage, sitting opposite him and his husband Larry at a Cracker Barrel in Texas with my co-producer, and actually I have to acknowledge too the producing aspect, our proper wonderful producer Kerry Kansky-Roberts is here, who is the reason why I'm sitting here. She read the book and like me, or before me, was like, somebody needs to put this on the screen. So David and I went to meet with John, and I was just constantly amazed at, again, talking about prejudging hatefulness. He was this guy who secretly was doing something for himself, trying to do something for his own psychology, and the more powerful he thought he could get within this organisation, it was a reminder that he was closer to God and on the right path of reorienting himself. And there was something so warm and charismatic and articulate about this man. I was actually disliked how much I was impressed by him as a person. If it wasn't for I disagreed with everything that he generally believed back then, I probably would have really liked the guy. And there he was telling me that he's now turned his back and he's trying to advocate against therapy, although I wonder how much of it is true contrition. Same with Alan Chambers, who used to run the parent company Exodus International, who, by the way, both of those men, and no better example that conversion therapy doesn't work than to have 2 of the biggest runners of the scam tell you now in face-to-face that it does not work to reorient one's sexuality. So what else do you need to know? You know, so anyway, I was compelled to play him. You knew it was a certain small amount of the shoot, and you know, what better way to sort of direct the film and direct the program. And the kids were terrified of me, and I was only every now and then, when time was of the essence or something was going on, there was one day where I did the long genogram scene and the camera panned around, and I had a beef with them because they'd secretly been watching the monitor, and I don't like kids watching, anybody watching the monitor. And so instead of doing my usual speech in character, I dressed them down for watching the monitor, because I thought this would really hit home for them. And I was like, maybe I should be directing in my character, because it would get things done, save a lot of time. It was a real challenge. The writing process, I tell you, I've never been picked up and carried away by a story than I have with this. And I was in Budapest in a hotel room, and I literally hunkered down and wrote the first draft. But never before have I done something that's so current and real world that I had the writer there with me to constantly bring into the process. So it was important. If I was going to tell the story, and I really didn't believe at the time that Kerry gave me the book, that because I'm not of the LGBTQ community, that I wasn't qualified to do it. I thought, I'll help make the movie somehow. I became so obsessed that I wrote the screenplay, and I was like, well, now I think I really want to make the movie. And that passion and Garrett's support, I now don't question it. I'm very proud that I've done it. I still am obsessed by it. You know, I had all my fingerprints all over it, but to the loss of a lot of other things in my life, to be honest, but that's fine. I won't go into that here, but you are a therapist.
we can talk. We can talk. So before we open it up...
Your process, because it seemed like you were both very committed to their roles. I was very interested in how you did that.
The first time I made a movie, it took me forever to get finance and get actors, and I think it was just simply about is this person going to even finish the film, and they, you know, like first-time filmmakers are hard to trust. I had something to show for it, and then so when I met Garrett, and I said, "Can I see photos of you during this time?" Because he had got really, really emaciated, he said. And then I looked at the photos and I was like, "Oh no, I've got to reach out to Nicole and Russell." Because that's, I mean, you saw the photos at the end, in particular Russell. It's like, who else was I going to choose? And the other aspect to that was, I needed to get somebody, or choose two people for those parents who were such kind of movie stars that we had a chance to get the movie out there. No reason why we couldn't sell it in other countries and all that stuff. So Nicole Kidman is behind this subject. Russell Crowe's behind this subject. I love them in these 100 movies, and maybe I'll see it when otherwise I might not have. You know, so there was that aspect, but also they just resembled the parents. And they're both such compassionate people. They just got so passionate about the subject. And you know, Russell, I mean, talk about, if you want to say something funny, Russell had quite a connection with the father. You know, he made phone calls and whatever, and then just took it upon himself one day to fly down to Arkansas and walk in and sit up the back of Herschel's, his real name, his congregation, in the middle of a sermon. You know, 70 people seeing their usual, you know, sermon, fanning themselves, and then someone goes up to give Herschel a message, and when they turn around, they're like, "Is that Russell Crowe?" Word got around, and then he had lunch with them all, and then Herschel gave him his pen, which he uses in the movie. He was constantly texting Russell, and Russell helped Russell build a sermon. So he was complicit in the movie. He's compassionate enough to be complicit in the movie. He didn't try and stop us. He invited me into his home, into his church, you know, so he is trying. But yeah, Russell and Nicole just dove right in. They were such great partners, and I was reticent to cast them as, you know, being Australians, because I actually didn't really have a prior history with either of them. And I didn't want people to think that we were, you know, doing something, that I was doing something patriotic while trying to but they just were the right people for it, physiologically and psychologically, and thankfully they were right behind us. We're at the cinema right now. Focus is releasing the film. I was going to almost finish the entire movie without any music in it at all, apart from composition, because, you know, one of the rules of Love in Action was that the participants, or the clients as they were called, were not meant to watch TV, read books other than religious material, and certainly not listen to modern music of any kind. And I thought I would do that through the movie. Until deeper into the movie, I was like, I want to see this boy before he's a man, before he's going through his gloom with his family, which is when I called Peter Hedges, who directed The Odd Life of Timothy Green, Lucas's father. This is when I first met him. And I said, "Look, did you ever film Lucas as a child?" And he goes, "Yeah." And the reason I knew he would is because when we love our children, we want to film them and photograph them, and that act is an act of pure love. Like, my dad used to film me playing soccer, and I was the worst soccer player. You know, there's a lot of footage of that. If you ever want to come around to my house. But so then suddenly there was a crack in the wall, and modern music was allowed in, because this song of Troy's, "The Good Side," which he'd already written, was there. Then Troy was like, "What else can I do?" And I was talking to Jonesy from Sigur Rós, and he had written this piano riff for the that I thought it'd be nice to pretend it was an old song that was on the record in the when he meets the character Xavier, the artist who he lies down with. And it's the most tender, beautiful, and honest moment in the movie for Lucas's character. And he said to me, I love Troye Sivan, do you think he would write the lyrics for this? So I put the two of them together, and the revelation is what came with it. And in that moment, that song plays sort of a little underground in the background, and it means one thing. It's almost like Lucas's character's or Garrett's point of view of somebody who is a revelation to him as somebody that he'd never met before. She described in the book as someone who was unlike anybody he was ever allowed to be associated with. This person who was out and free and identified how he did and had his feet planted on the ground with confidence. But when we do it at the end of the film, we re-recorded it in a fuller fashion, because then the song really is about him. It's about his agency, and it's about who he's developed and become.